Who are a few people who are simply natural-born criminals? Let's find out, starting with number 5, Advantage Scammers. The UK's biggest ever government benefits fraudsters stole $68 million from British taxpayers. 5 Bulgarian fraudsters used a combination of fake and stolen identities to make 6,000 welfare claims over 4.5 years. 2 of the fraudsters, Galina Nikolova and Stoyanov, shared pictures of themselves on a luxurious trip to Turkey. Nikolova's pictures showed them cuddling on a sofa in Istanbul, standing with bunches of roses that Stoyanov had given her. The couple also shared photos of their indulgent spa trip and a visit to Aston Hall, an elegant historic mansion, before going to watch an Aston Villa soccer match at the team stadium, Villa Park. Although they flaunted their elaborate trips and days out, Nikolova's social media made them look like a fairly normal couple. Other snaps of the group of con artists included a clip of one of them showering their apartment with hundreds of 20-pound notes, which is like, people really do that? The group operated out of 3 benefits factories and hid in plain sight. In places such as Antonia's Foods, a local grocery store that was operating as a front for the scammers. Nikolova posted pictures on social media of herself smiling and posing behind the counter at the store. While she smiled for the camera, the fraudsters were busy using the government welfare system like an ATM. They operated several businesses, claiming they were helping people obtain their national insurance numbers, essentially the UK's version of social security numbers, and claim benefits. From October of 2016 to May of 2021, the criminal group filed forged documents like fake leases, pay stubs, and fraudulent letters from landlords, employers, and doctors. The con artists would even boldly fight whenever the claims were rejected until they got the decisions overturned. Their actions put them on law enforcement's radar, and eventually, 4 of the 5 fraudsters were arrested. The 5th con artist fled to Bulgaria, but was eventually extradited back to the UK as well. Investigators searched the scammers' homes and found hundreds of forged and false documents. They also discovered stacks of cash stuffed in suitcases, plastic bags, and designer items like jackets, watches, and glasses. By the end of the search, officers had so much incriminating evidence that the 5 were forced to plead guilty. Number 4. Rags to riches to prison. A Chinese takeout worker, Jian Wen, helped the police uncover one of the world's largest Bitcoin hauls, worth over £1 billion. Wen's life changed forever after she responded to a job posting for a butler. After meeting at the 5-star Royal Garden Hotel in London, Yadi Zhang employed her as her live-in personal assistant. Within weeks, Wen, who had arrived in London with only a few $1,000s to her name, left her tiny studio apartment and took out a lease on a $6 million home, which cost her $50,000 up front and $22,000 a month. She paid thousands to send her son to a private school and dropped him off in her new E-Class Mercedes, and the lavish expenses were just beginning. Wen became a global jet setter, traveling to Zurich, Germany, Rome, Norway, China, Thailand, and Japan. During her travels, she pretended to be a part of a jewelry business and traded diamonds and antiques. While in Dubai, the single mother spent more than $500,000 on 2 apartments and set her sights on a $12 million 18th century Tuscan villa in Italy. But her luxurious lifestyle crumbled when she decided to drop millions of dollars on 2 London mansions. Wen attempted to buy 2 multi-million-dollar homes, one boasting a swimming pool and the other decked out with its own movie theater and home gym. But the spending spree triggered anti-money laundering checks, and officers discovered Wen was apparently sitting on millions of dollars of Bitcoin. At first, she struggled to explain where the Bitcoin came from, which prompted law enforcement to freeze the property purchases. Initially, she claimed the crypto was mined, but later changed her story to say that Zhang had given it to her as a love present, which you'd think meant she got a baby or something, but in this case, it apparently meant Bitcoin. That present led to the UK's biggest ever crypto seizure in 2021, during which the British government discovered a whopping $1.76 billion on a secure wallet in a safety deposit box. But as of March 2024, the crypto's value increased to $4.28 billion. Law enforcement arrested Wen, but she swore her innocence in court. She told jurors that Zhang had fooled her while she assisted the crypto queen with her jewelry business. According to Wen, the business had branches in China, Singapore, and Malaysia. She traveled to Europe with Zhang, where they used Bitcoin to buy high-end items like Swiss watches worth almost $90,000 each. Oddly, despite all their travels, Wen and Zhang never took a single photo together. Perhaps Zhang knew that if she were in a picture with Wen, it would be easier to track her down. They had enough Bitcoin for Zhang to instruct Wen to buy the 2 London mansions, which were worth a combined $45 million. Wen said she had no idea that the Bitcoin came from the proceeds of an investment scam Yadi was running in China, but the jury thought differently, and she was convicted on money laundering charges. As of this video, she has yet to be sentenced. Zhang fled the UK, and as of March 2024, hasn't been seen. Number 3. No wives, period. After spending 4 years in prison for a botched hit job plot against his wife, Ira Bernstein was busted for trying to have his wife bumped off again. The New York podiatrist left prison in 2021 after serving time for plotting to hire a car salesman to snuff out his estranged wife, Susan Bernstein. Back in 2015, Bernstein and his girlfriend, Kelly Grebuluk, devised a plan to get rid of Susan by paying salesman Markenzie Louison to run her over and make it look like an accident. Apparently, always one looking for a bargain, Grebuluk took charge of the negotiations. Originally, Louison wanted $200,000 for the job, but she talked him down to $100,000. Grebuluk, a former mortician and aspiring model, bonded with Bernstein during his separation from Susan. She somehow thought she was doing what was best for his family by getting rid of her new partner's estranged wife, which it most certainly was not. Thankfully, instead of going ahead with the plan, Louison reported Grebuluk and Bernstein to the police, and the couple was arrested. Susan condemned Bernstein's actions in court on the first go-around, calling him evil for attempting to leave their special needs daughter without a mother. In 2017, when Bernstein received his first 5 to 15-year sentence, the 3 kids he shared with Susan were terrified of him and Grebuluk being released and called for tougher penalties to keep the pair behind bars for as long as possible. However, the duo were paroled within a few months of each other anyway. Then, a year after his release, Bernstein turned to his lawyer's sister, Jacqueline Goldberg, to help him try again. The plan was for Goldberg to destroy the evidence, but Bernstein was caught before he could follow through with his plan for a second time. In June of 2023, he was back in court and charged with multiple felonies for his attempts to solicit the passing of his wife. Goldberg, an employment attorney, was also charged with tampering with physical evidence, hindering the prosecution, and conspiracy. Looks like no matter how hard he tried, he was never going to be successful. Seems pretty dumb, considering he already served 4 years for basically the same crime. Number 2. Stolen identity. William Woods was sent to a mental hospital when he tried to claim his identity back after an ex-coworker stole it. Matthew David Kierans stole Woods' identity back in 1988 when the two worked together at a hot dog stand. Kierans' life changed dramatically when he assumed Woods' name. He took out loans, got married, and even built a successful IT career. Before he became William Woods, Matthew Kierans lived a tumultuous life. His parents adopted him in 1966, and when he was 16, he ran away from home, stole a car, and drove from San Francisco to Oregon, where he was arrested but failed to appear in court. Instead of going to court, he went to Albuquerque, New Mexico, its own type of prison, am I right? Where he met the real William Woods while working at a hot dog stand. Once Matthew had Woods' information, he got a fake Colorado ID in Woods' name, which he used to open a bank account and get a job at a fast food restaurant. His next move was to spend $600 on a car. Kierans wrote 2 $300 checks under Woods' name, and both bounced. But instead of returning the car, he just stole it and drove the thing to Idaho. He abandoned it when it broke down and withdrew all the money from the Colorado bank account he opened in Woods' name. And Kierans' web of lies was just beginning. It gets crazy. By 1994, Kierans had a wife and child, both of whom he gave the last name Woods. Next, he moved to Colorado and used a copy of Woods' birth certificate to get information about his relatives on Ancestry.com, like he's Tom Ripley or something. While posing as William Woods, Kierans' career took off. He took a job as a systems architect at the University of Iowa Hospital. For the next 10 years, he made over $700,000 and was earning $140,501 by 2023. Although Kierans was living living a pretty good life using Woods' name, the real William Woods was homeless in Los Angeles. Woods went to a bank branch in 2019 and discovered that someone had used his bank accounts and information to accumulate a lot of debt. He tried to close the accounts and gave the bank his social security number and ID. Couldn't answer any of the security questions Kieran's had set up for the account. The bank called their contact number for Woods, and Kieran's picked up. The con artist answered the questions and told the employees that he hadn't given anyone in California permission to access his accounts. So one of the bank employees called law enforcement, who questioned Woods and Kieran's. The police arrested the real Woods and charged him with identity theft and false impersonation. They further concluded that he wasn't mentally competent to stand trial, so they sent him to a mental hospital. Here's the thing though, he was mentally just fine. Eventually, a judge gave Woods 2 years in county jail, but gave him credit for the 2 years he spent in the hospital. One of the terms of his release was that he stopped claiming to be William Woods, but Woods refused to give up. Woods eventually tracked down Kieran's and contacted his employer's security department. The University of Iowa Hospital sent his complaint to the police department, which opened an investigation. Detective Ian Mafound ordered DNA tests, which confirmed that Woods was telling the truth and that Kieran's was a scammer. Over 30 years after he first used Woods' name, Kieran's confessed to prolonged identity theft and entered police custody in July of 2023. A federal court indicted him on multiple counts of identity theft and false statements to a national credit union administration. As of May of 2024, Kieran's is in custody of the U.S. Marshals and is facing up to 32 years imprisonment. What a nightmare to have someone steal your name and now suddenly you're homeless and told you're insane. Thing is, Kieran's made a pretty good life for himself off of his own merits, so this all seemed pretty pointless, which makes the whole thing strange. If you're enjoying this video, be sure to stay right here to find out how police finally caught him after 40 years. Number 1. BBLs gone wild. A Texas mother-daughter duo administered illegal and dangerous butt Botox injections, something Botox isn't used for. Across the U.S., Consuelo Dalbo and her daughter, Isabella, charged customers $6,000 for the butt-boosting procedure. Law enforcement suspected the pair's illegal operation and sent an undercover officer to pose as a client. The officer met the women at a temporary residence in Texas, as you'd expect with shady medical operations. Well, at least it wasn't in some back alley or in a bus or something. Seriously, people will get this stuff done pretty much anywhere, won't they? Anyway, Consuelo and Isabella said they had come straight from the airport after traveling to California for work. Before they began the procedure, the mother-daughter duo gave the officer some meds to relax right before they got down to their illegal procedure, which was enough evidence for the officer to make an arrest. The FDA, Homeland Security Investigations, and the Houston Department's Major Offenders Division joined forces to bring down Consuelo and Isabella. Cameras caught the women leaving their home in handcuffs while police swarmed the property. Law enforcement removed bottles of illegal injectables and medical equipment from the premises. The women claimed they didn't even know what was in the bottles as they were being brought out. Psh, yeah, right. They totally knew what was in those bottles. Consuelo and Isabella were released on bond after being charged, and this mother-daughter team are far from the only people illegally performing these dangerous procedures. Substances like injectable silicone used for body contouring come with many risks. The problem is that the injectable silicone breaks into small particles and travels throughout the body, causing potentially life-threatening complications such as an embolism or stroke. Who are some of the criminals we had no clue about? Let's find out, starting with number 5. 40 years of hiding. America's most wanted fugitive, Donald Santini, was finally caught by the police after roughly 40 years on the run. Santini's criminal career stemmed back to the 1970s when he served jail time for a crime he committed in Germany while he was in the army. He was also charged with robbery in Texas. In 1984, authorities believed he completed a hit on Cynthia Ruth Wood, a mother who was in the middle of a custody battle. He evaded capture for the next 40 years by adopting various aliases and traveling the country. Although he had a wife and child in Texas, he fled to California to start a new life. Santini changed his name to Wellman Simmons and worked at various jobs, including apartment manager, running an antique store, and serving as president on a water board. He married another woman, and the pair had several children. Santini opened a Thai restaurant with his second wife in La Mesa, and while he appeared to be a wealthy businessman, the fugitive was in a lot of debt. He owed one guy $24,000 for giving him a personal loan for his restaurant. When Santini worked as an apartment manager, a former tenant sued him for over $91,000. The tenant had moved into the building, and Santini agreed to pay him $25 an hour for some work. They arranged for Santini to forward the guy his checks to cover his rent, but Santini just kept the money instead. Eventually, the property company that Santini worked for evicted the tenant for unpaid rent, prompting the lawsuit. Before long, Wellman Simmons owed dozens of people hundreds of thousands of dollars and declared bankruptcy 3 times. In a 2004 filing, he listed over $161,000 in liabilities and included a long list of his debts, including $10,000 owed to the San Diego Union Tribune newspaper and an undisclosed amount owed to American Express. In 2018, Santini was even on TV being interviewed by ABC San Diego after 2 people who lived in an apartment building that he managed had passed away. Law enforcement eventually tracked Simmons down when he applied for a passport renewal. His daughter, Whitney Simmons, had no clue about her father's double life. When she discovered that U.S. Marshals arrested him in relation to Cynthia Ruth Woods' passing, Whitney was certain someone had set him up. She thought that his other children were angry with him and decided to inform the FBI about her father's whereabouts. A week after Santini's arrest, Whitney's brother and sister put her family home on the market and sold their father's belongings. Whitney challenged the evidence against her father regarding Woods' case and insisted that the husband set it up. In court, he admitted to being Donald Santini, not Wellman Simmons, despite living under that name for 2 decades. After almost 40 years on the run, Donald Santini is set to live out the rest of his days behind bars with a 50-year prison sentence after pleading guilty. It makes you wonder, how does he feel about it? The guy lived a pretty full life on the run, but also had to live with the knowledge of the crime he committed. What do you think? Is he finally at peace now that he's been caught and sentenced? Or was this guy a total psychopath that's mad he got caught? Tell us in the comments below. Number 4. Uber cheats. Brittany Narbet used a friend's credit card details to order thousands of dollars of food deliveries. The fraud started when the victim let Narbet use his debit card to make an Uber Eats delivery. Narbet saved his details and for the next year and a half used them to order 211 meals and averaged 12 deliveries a month. Narbet mainly ordered McDonald's, although sometimes treated herself to meals from places like Pizza Hut, Subway, and several other local restaurants. Somehow, the friend didn't notice the Uber Eats charges to his bank account until a mutual friend discovered what had happened and let the victim know. He realized Narbet stole $7,300 to pay for her food deliveries and contacted the police. Narbet pleaded guilty to 14 counts of fraud by false representation and expressed her regret for what she did. She also alluded to the fact that it wasn't just her involvement in the scam, but said she didn't want to put herself or her children through more stress. The judge sentenced Narbet to a 12-month mental health treatment program and ordered her to repay all the money she stole from the victim. Make sure you avoid situations like this by remembering to have alerts switched on for every purchase made using your debit or credit card. And obviously, don't save your payment details on someone else's phone. Number 3. Hollywooding. Ann Dunlop conned her family out of $43,000 in a bogus Hollywood actress fraud. Dunlop, who lived with her husband and an unnamed female roommate, told family members that her roommate was about to have her big break in Hollywood and was being lined up for some million-dollar contracts. She claimed that the future star's manager was U.S. entertainment executive Irving Azoff and that the woman was mingling with A-listers such as Beyoncé and Leonardo DiCaprio. Dunlop convinced her brother, David Bunton, that the roommate needed cash to tide her over until the money from her Hollywood contracts arrived. David was a former life science company CEO who sold his business for some pretty good money and gave her a loan. Anne also targeted her sister Jean and brother-in-law Steve Allen, who thought that Dunlop and her roommate had champagne on tap at their fancy London residence. Although Anne's roommate was bound to be a star, Anne asked Jean and Steve to help pay her bills because she just didn't have the money. After learning that Irving Azoff was representing the actress, David handed the pair $6,100 to help build her career. The two women also mentioned working on movies with Michael Keaton and Quentin Tarantino. The alleged actress said she went to the Oscars to network and had met Leonardo DiCaprio while working on a marketing campaign for Chanel, and also told her family that the woman was going to star in the movie version of Wicked, directed by Tim Burton. David didn't know the exact figure that the fraudster would earn for the movie, but believed it would be millions of dollars. So, being a good brother, he loaned Dunlop $33,000 when he learned she and her husband were struggling to make ends meet. David also covered at least one of their utility bills. Then, months passed, and nothing was even attempted to be repaid. The woman was supposed to appear in the Chanel Christmas commercial, but when it aired, David noticed that she wasn't in it. So naturally, he grew suspicious of his sister and her friend and hired a private investigator to keep an eye on the woman. He wanted to know if the alleged soon-to-be star was actually represented by Azov, or if his sister had lied to him. David and Alan were under the impression Anne and the woman lived a movie star lifestyle in London. When they visited Anne's place for her birthday party, there was an endless supply of champagne. The two men also noticed that the woman liked to shop at Harrods, an expensive luxury department store, and had designer handbags. While living extravagantly, the women turned to Alan for help covering Dunlop's $730 gas bill that she said she couldn't afford. Dunlop said she would repay Alan in 2 weeks, as she had a large sum of money in her bank account, but it wasn't available immediately because it was tied up in an investment fund. She also told her family members that Tim Burton collected her roommate's debit and credit cards and put them in a safe, which is such a weird thing to say Tim Burton did with no explanation, and was eventually found guilty of defrauding her family out of $43,000. She said in court that she really believed the actress had starred in the movie she told her family about. She added that she asked her family for money when her husband got sick and stopped working, and also mentioned that the woman was going to appear on a US TV show and had already filmed an episode for it. Dunlop and her accomplice agreed to pay David and Alan all of the money they took. People never expect their own siblings to scam them, unless your sibling is Logan Paul. Number 2. Breaking Bad, the math version. Math teacher Jeffrey Scott Blake kept a host of illegal substances and related paraphernalia in his RV. He had worked for Citrus County School District in Florida since 2001. Law enforcement first discovered a glass pipe in Blake's pocket that had traces of illegal substances and discovered 3 clear plastic bags inside 2 eyeglass cases which contained multiple illegal substances. They executed 2 search warrants at the veteran teacher's home where they discovered large quantities of illegal substances and items associated with selling those illegal things. Authorities arrested Blake, holding him on a $21,000 bond. Although all school district employees had to go through FBI Level 2 background checking, Blake's illegal activities were undetected. Blake faced multiple charges related to his selling. The school district conducted a separate investigation to determine the future of Blake's employment, which is just words because how on earth would this guy ever keep his job? Several of his former students came forward to say that they knew something was up with him. They described him as hyper and sometimes skittish. Maybe combining his illegal activities in his personal life with being a math teacher was a bad decision. In addition to his charges, Blake was arrested again for the worst type of illegal pictures you can imagine on his electronic devices. He faced 75 years in prison. However, there wasn't public information as of the release of this video in regards to the outcome of his case. Number 1. Grandma embezzles $200,000. Patricia Bennett stole $200,000 from her employer to pay for vacations and a DIY pop-up bar in the back of her refurbished backyard. The grandmother worked as an account manager at J. Shaw Electrical Engineers for almost 25 years. She started with the firm in 1998 and was responsible for invoicing, balancing accounts, paying wages and suppliers, and looking after employees' retirement funds. Her boss was David Whitehead, the managing director of the organization. Throughout her employment, Whitehead always felt he could trust Bennett. When she retired, a new account manager took her place and noticed a bunch of discrepancies in the company's accounts. The new employee realized that some suppliers were paid twice, but when she contacted those companies, she discovered they only received payment once. Whitehead discovered that the extra payments were dispersed between 2 accounts under Bennett's name and 1 in her husband's name. During an investigation, Whitehead and his team learned that Bennett created profiles for companies that J. J. Shaw electrical engineers worked with, but used her own account numbers for payments. The small payments made it easy for the transactions to go unnoticed. Bennett began stealing in 2008 and openly treated herself to vacations on her RV and trips to Spain. As investigators searched for the whereabouts of the missing money, they turned to her social media accounts where she had shared multiple pictures of her vacations in the UK, Spain, and Greece. Bennett also posted images of the elaborate bar she built in her backyard. Bennett's days of enjoying her lavish lifestyle were cut short when she was arrested and charged with fraud. Bennett's lawyer said that she had originally taken money from her employer as her husband was sick and money was tight. Not excusable, but understandable. But when nobody noticed the extra charges to the company's accounts, she couldn't resist the temptation to keep stealing. Whitehead admitted that if he'd known that Bennett was struggling, the company would have found a way to help her. They were a small, family-owned business and felt extremely betrayed, especially since she had access to the accounts of Whitehead's brother, father, and grandfather. Bennett was sentenced to 18 months in jail and formally apologized to her former employer. But Bennett loved to brag on social media about all of her vacations and refurbished backyard. So do you think she was truly sorry, or just sorry she got caught?